When it comes to teamwork, nothing is more crucial regarding this application than upon entering a tank crew. In this restrictive, tight, claustrophobic mobile armored fort, if you are not in sync with your other crew members, regardless of the role you are in, you will only meet defeat. Only through responding adequately as a single body to the appropriate actions to take from each crew member addressing issues they see, will you be effective. This is Hell Let Loose, coordinating the monster.
I'm gonna be like a fucking,
Spotted the infantry right now. Stop. Nope, there's... Come on.
This would be such an action shot. Contact infantry running right, that's the 8C guy bearing 2-4.
Dead ahead. I can't shoot with him, buddy. 353, just gonna shoot it. God, he just spotted him.
2-3, 2-5.
Can't turn.
Yeah, just put it dead ahead.
Okay. I'm shooting at the barn, they all ran in there.
Yeah.
In the 15th century, Leonardo da Vinci designed a fighting vehicle that was powered by dual cranks that was operated by 4 men. Da Vinci took inspiration from nature into his inventions. The outside armored portion of this machine was based off designs of a turtle shell. Cannons wrapped the entire circumference, so when driven into battle, all 360 degrees would be accounted for. Now, since this mobile fort was primitive, it wasn't designed for all terrain. If this machine was ever deployed, it wouldn't have been effective outside of peak conditions it was built for. A reason why this machine never saw the light of day during the 15th century is because Da Vinci himself may have purposely designed a blueprint with crucial faults in it. If built exactly to plan, the wheels would have ended up spinning in the opposite direction of each other. There is a popular belief that circles around this invention, and I know you as the viewer are itching for me to say that Da Vinci was the first person to invent the tank. I won't be making that statement. There is a major flaw with that conclusion from its own logic. Historians themselves lean to the conclusion that this invention is more along the lines of a fantasy. It is closer to a modern car than it is a tank. In all reality, the invention is closer to the lines of an extreme upgrade to a chariot. Furthermore, to debunk this popular belief, during the same century before Da Vinci was born, one can argue that a Czech general whose innovation with war wagons were the first iteration of tanks. You can go back even further to the Khmer Empire and argue that war elephants were actually field tanks. You can easily argue that battering rams, siege towers, catapults. You can go all the way back to 427 BCE Sparta and make a compelling argument when tanks first appeared and who invented them. This logic is simply flawed and it needs to be corrected. Credit needs to go where credit is due. So no. We need a definitive definition for what constitutes as a tank. Meet Lancelot, Elden, He is an engineer and inventor born out of Australia. He had an idea for an armored vehicle that could traverse difficult terrain by using caterpillar tracks. He approached and submitted his designs to the British War Office, believing his invention could be of use. Come June 1913, he was informed that his idea was rejected and his drawings and plans were returned to him. But not all of them. He tried submitting his work again 2 years later, but was told he needed a working model which he ended up building but did not have a means to travel to England. He then tried to enlist in the Australian Imperial Force, but was medically unfit, thus once again rejected. 1 year later, in 1916, the first British tank and tank overall, the Mark I, was deployed on the battlefield. De Mol, taking notice to this, accepted he was being ignored, but felt strongly that his design was superior. In 1917, he finally had a chance to embark for England with his model. It then took 2 years for him to lodge claims with the British Commission for the invention. The judgment ended up being unfavorable for de Mol. The commission attributed the machine to 2 British inventors. They did acknowledge that his design was superior from his 1912 blueprints. However, the government required that he have a connection with his invention in what was deployed in 1916. They did admit that the War Office kept some of his original designs from 1912, but attest that they were never employed. In some good faith throughout all of this, Lancelot Elden de Mol's expenses were covered by the commission. They made him honorable corporal, and in 1920, de Mol was appointed CBE. If you are starting to think that the British War Office had shady practices regarding this case, you aren't incorrect. This sort of happens more often than you think. To put this to the test, I ask you, who invented the telephone? Do you want to say Alexander Graham Bell? He didn't. He was the first to patent the invention. The inventor of the telephone is attributed to an Italian, Antonio Meucci. Now, who was the first in flight? That is easy to answer. The Wright brothers. It even says it on North Carolina's license plate. No, that is incorrect. The first in flight goes to a French inventor, Henry Giffard. He created an airship that had a total of 3 horsepower. He went at a top speed of 6 miles per hour for 20 miles. Giffard even patented his invention in 1858, 48 years before the Wright brothers. Now, his aircraft versus the Wright brothers' aircraft is obviously different, but the Wright brothers were not the first in flight. Now, I wouldn't say all of this is exactly shady. It's more along the lines of the application of patents tend to shade the history of inventors. I am clearly giving examples of primitive inventions compared to the more practical patent invention, but the principle I am making stands. In the years to come up to this very moment, it is now accepted that Lancelot Elden de Mol is the inventor of tanks. It's interesting to note that the word tank was used by the British as a secrecy word. They didn't want the enemy to know what they were working on. When tanks first deployed in the field, they were given the name landships. Now, I am unable to find why they ended up changing it back to the code name, but my assumption is that tank just sounds cooler.
Look at you, nobody. Tank commander now.
Can we move back and left a little
sideways.
bit spot where I can neither really see
Yeah.
fully down this road or...
So proud.
Right, here we go. Let's take a look at these monsters in Hell Lets Loose. Now, this game is in early access. The devs have already stated that they will be adding more tanks and countries in the coming updates. For that reason, I will not be addressing each individual tank for a review. Instead, I will be addressing the tanks as light, medium, and heavy, as they are respected in the in-game legend. A quick synopsis of this gameplay can be equated to a rock, paper, scissors, shoot style gameplay, to a degree. It's a little more complicated than that, but the real-life engagement and use of tanks translates well into video game language regarding the real-time strategy gameplay element. When operating a light tank, I am sure you are unable to take out a medium and heavy tank with its firepower alone. You may be able to do some damage hitting its rear or tracks, but Boone and I were unable to conclude this, for we would end up retreating from the engagement or dying, because we are picking a fight with a vastly more powerful counterpart.
Can we damage from our direct rear shot?
I think you can. I'm not sure. If anything, you're harassing him.
Light tanks are more suitable to aid medium and heavy tanks out in the field to deal with threats from infantry. These tanks are fast, easy to maneuver, and work great as a support to other tanks or infantry. Heavy tanks are the real monsters of the battlefield. They are the immediate threat that all infantry become scared of. Heavy tanks are able to deal effectively with other heavy tanks, as well as possibly take out medium tanks in one hit, and of course light tanks do not stand a chance in a one-on-one encounter. However, with this firepower and armor comes reduced horsepower. They are slow. Extremely slow. Medium tanks are of course the mix of the two. Light tanks pose little to no threat to you, but heavy tanks in a one-on-one poses a large threat. You will be able to take out a heavy tank with a medium tank, but be sure you are at its rear or shooting its tracks. If you engage face to face, you will most likely lose, depending if the opposing tank has a competent crew. In real life, World War II tank crews were made of up to 3 to 5 crew members. Hell Let Loose allows up to 3 members to take part of rolling out a single tank. From tank commander to his 2 crew members, this game does take some liberties in allowing some of the members to be able to perform dual tasks. Let's dive into it deeper. Driver. The driver most likely has the edge of being the top priority role for the entire tank squad. You are responsible for transporting your crew with the tank into a safe position on the battlefield, allowing the crew to engage any threats. This is going to be the biggest section to speak about regarding roles. First things first though, when you enter the driver's seat, you have to hold down E to start the engine. No one told me this the first time entering a tank crew.
Oh, Pillow's driving.
Item, you might as well stay.
I always forget you gotta start the engine.
Yeah, it took me forever too.
From there, since the tanks are manual, you press shift to switch gears up and control to shift gears down. All tanks, thus far in the game, can enter 4th gear. Once geared down to 1st gear, press control once again to put it in park. If you need to reverse, simply press control again and you will be able to back up. Since Lancelot de Mol designed these beasts with caterpillar tracks, you are able to zero turn. Simply switch it to 1st gear or reverse and turn in the direction you need to face. This is a crucial behavior to learn, for when you are face to face with another tank, the strongest armor is the very front of the tank. Before doing so, be sure that you are coordinating with your crew if it's an appropriate time to turn, for when you turn the entire crew.
Stop moving. When you move, it moves to turn.
When beginning to get closer to any enemy engagement, you as the driver will be hounded with callouts from the gunner and spotter. They will tell you to stop the tank and possibly face a certain direction. It is best to trust your crew for these callouts. The driver has a tiny slit you can see through. When ordered to stop, keep in mind you are driving a very heavy tank. In 4th gear, you will not be stopping on a dime. World War II tanks, even though are a great improvement from the World War I landship counterparts, are still crude and primitive. Case in point, exactly how it happened in real life, regardless of being built with caterpillar tracks, you will get stuck. You will. In ditches, on snowbanks, between any obstacle you can think of, the terrain and environment is against you as the driver. It's infuriating to deal with. You work so hard to get the tank up into the action only for terrain to beat you. This is only a glimpse of what real tank crews must have felt like during World War II. At least we don't have to dig ourselves out of these predicaments. What's even worse is if you are able to get yourself out of a ditch and once again start gaining ground to engage the enemy, you are instead immediately shot down and destroyed by a friendly tank.
You got to be kidding. A team killer?
Literally just got TK'd by a friendly tank.
All that work.
As the driver, outside of the light tank, you are given access to a machine gun that you can use to fire upon enemies that are in front of you. You can check where you are aiming, sort of, by what I assume is a placeholder graphic for the position of your gun. Speaking of guns, Gunner. As the gunner, you are the weapon of the monster. It's best to understand which ammo to use when and why. Obviously, heavy tanks deal more damage than medium and light tanks. Remember, light tanks are best suited against infantry. I wouldn't advise engaging enemy tanks with the cannon it offers. When inside a medium and heavy tank, you have the option of 2 explosive shells, AP and HE. AP is designed to take on tanks, while HE is made to engage infantry. AP is great against armor, while HE explodes to cover a wider area than AP would. You can use HE against enemy tanks, but it's a poor choice when in a fight. When in a jumbo, you do have the option of deploying smoke, which can be effective.
You want me to turn so I can face him?
No, no.
He's right on my thing. If you just keep...
Copy that.
I can't see a damn thing.
When engaging enemy tanks, be sure to try to shoot its rear, sides, or tracks. Right now, the tracks and the rear are the best way to take out other tanks. The devs have stated how they want to address this, but haven't given any insight how they will be balancing it. You absolutely can go toe-to-toe with other tanks and come out victorious. In another case, even if you get the first shot off with no damage done to you, you can be taken out in one hit. You also have a machine gun you can use by holding the right mouse button down to deal with infantry. I would, however, refrain from shooting the machine gun when smoke is deployed, for it could give away your position due to the tracers.
Stop. Don't do the machine gunner. That's giving away our position. Yeah.
Basically, to simplify the advice to give you, as the gunner, your goal is to destroy everything.
There it goes. Okay, good. We took out 2 tanks.
Spotter. The spotter or hatchboy role is quite straightforward. You are there to spot. You can quickly see all 360 degrees with your sights. You are there to help navigate the driver through the environment. The zoom is incredible, therefore it is your responsibility to find enemy tanks, infantry, opposing obstacles, and landmines. And that is pretty much it. You have one job.
I hope you get extensively into the spotter role in your tank video.
For the overall team working with tank squads, if you are in the role of commander and one of your tank commanders requests a tank, meet the request by dropping in the tank where they are requesting it. If you are an officer and have support and an engineer, be sure to build repair stations near strong points so tanks may be able to get repairs, so they can be out in the field to aid the infantry longer. Tank crews. If infantry is unable to get to you for repairs or unable to build a repair station, simply do your best to return to HQ to restock and get fixed up. Collectively together, the teamwork must be flawless if you wish to be effective. Now, you can successfully run a 2-man tank squad and both of you switch in and out of all the roles together, but it is still inferior to a complete crew. Personally, I have to say I find operating a tank to be a lot of fun. I wouldn't have made this film if it wasn't for my buddy Boone showing me the ins and outs of it over the last couple of months.
Dude, this is golden for your video.
With that said, take what I've presented with you as a guide to apply when joining a tank crew. If anyone watching has further information that I am slightly off with or that is more updated, share it. We can learn and improve collectively. Real quick, I once believed that turning the engine off helps the repairs go faster. That was once a widespread belief in the game, but it turned out to be simple superstition.
You can leave the tank, you can leave it running, it's fine.
You repair faster if it's off.
No, you don't.
You have 3 engineers repairing you anyway.
Oh, okay.
No, if you leave the engine running, it'll repair the same as if it's not. We tested it.
Oh, okay.
it.
Well, thank you for updating me on that. I was still
I always
All
knew
good.
that was false.
As well as, I am now questioning if keeping the tanks running all the time actually drains the overall fuel pool. I was told it did, but I have watched the fuel with the engine on, but I cannot make a definitive statement if it does or not. I would love to be enlightened on this. As a tank crew, work together as one unit. When you communicate with each other, you will be highly effective out in the battlefield. Be sure not to behave as a hero. Do not go off in the distance alone without any support from other tanks or infantry. You are a massive target and you will be hunted to destruction. Keep with your brothers in arms. Stay relatively close to other tanks and infantry. Only then, working with the entire team, will you see the effect you have on the battlefield. You are there to strike fear in your enemies and hope in your allies. For you are indeed
So sorry, man. I was shooting this guy in front of us.
a monster.
They're all in the house. I'm gonna blow it up. Oh, they just blowed all you up. gonna get some smoke in that house, that's what I'm gonna do.
Good idea. Also, maybe some AG up there would be nice, actually.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit the window too, up top. There we go. The house should be clear. I can't see anything now because of all the smoke.
All 360 degrees will be accounted for. Would be accounted for. I screwed up already. The commission attributed the attributed if it's an appropriate time to turn. For when you turn, your team turn. What? You aren't incorrect. This sort of happens. Oh, damn it! I had it.